The Podcasting Dead is available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and SoundCloud. Make sure to subscribe for more podcasts. And while you're at it, drop us a like. If you want to help support the channel and have access to extra content, secret contests, and more, make sure to search for us on Patreon. Patreon.com/thepodcastingdead.
All right, let's talk about The Walking Dead.
Oh boy, what are we talking about? The new series, The Walking Dead mid-season premiere, the comic books. Man, where are you trying to dive in?
A little bit of everything today. So before we begin, I'm Justin.
Oh, I'm JP.
And we are The Podcasting Dead. As the intro said, consider checking out our channel. We podcast about a lot of everything, including The Walking Dead. So over the weekend, I had a little bit of free time, and I decided, you know what? I went back and rewatched The Walking Dead show from beginning to end.
How far? So you've went through the whole gambit. Oh, yeah. Wow, man.
Yeah. So I was like, I want to do that with the comics, too. You know, I want to start from the beginning and then read to present day, or to the actual end. They're done now. And I did. So I figured, I've gotten through the first two. I read the hardcovers. They have like the compendiums, which are basically 4 of the hardcovers. Yeah. Then you have the hardcovers, which I think are like, 2 of the trade paperbacks-ish, right. Yeah. And then the trade paperback are several issues in one. Yeah. But I always got the hardcovers. I think those came out like once a year or something like that. And I mean, nice. I get the individual issues too, but I get those too. It's kind of a nice way to do what I'm doing without having to dig the comics back out.
Oh, you don't want to go back through and get your fangy prints on the comics and all that stuff.
No, I don't have to worry about untaping and retaping and touching and all of that. No, they are safe and sound. But anyway, so I've been going back and I've gotten through the first 2 volumes, which goes through, some of the prison saga and all that. And I figured we'd just talk about it because there are some interesting things that I completely forgot and just some of the differences and such. So this isn't necessarily a video that's going to maybe tell you something that someone else isn't out there talking about in YouTube land or podcasting world or something you might not have even known, but it is a discussion that we haven't had before. So
we're just having a fun reminiscence.
Right. So, all right, you can probably hear me moving my mic there. Apologies. I need one of those. No, I need one of those cages. A lot of it could use some WD-40, but there are a lot of times there's cages so you can grab and pull the mic where you want and it doesn't create the vibration and the sound. But anyways, so with number one, let me just say Tony Moore, right? That's the guy that did the artwork.
If I'm correct, yes.
I think Charlie Adler's artwork is good. I'm going to say though, man, I really appreciated the detail in the original artwork, which basically died with Shane.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we'll have to agree to disagree on. I do like Tony Moore stuff, but I like Charlie Adler just a little bit better.
And you've had a lot more time with Charlie Adler, that's too, true. And obviously spoilers for the Walking Dead comic, but if you didn't know that going in, I don't know what to tell you. You should stay off the internet. It's a dangerous place. One thing that I immediately, think of, because I completely forgot this whole plot point, but, you have Tyrese's daughter and her boyfriend, Chris, kill each other. Well, he kills her by accident. They try to commit suicide, and their whole plan was we're going to shoot each other at the same time, and then we'll both be dead and spend forever together. But he pulls the trigger just a little bit too quick after they had some uncomfortable teenage sex, which we don't see that. We just see the aftermath. But and he kills her. Then Tyrese comes in, and he kills him. And
with his bare hand.
And Tyrese was apparently, in the show, you had Dr. Jenner was the one to tell Rick, like, everyone's infected. But, pretty much Tyrese was the one to tell him in the comic, just because Tyrese is like, he's going to come back, and then I'm going to kill him again, but this time slower. And Rick's like, he wasn't bit, and Tyrese is kind of like, doesn't matter. They're going to come back.
Oh, is that where they made that revelation?
After that, yeah. That's it's been so long, Tyrese's daughter is and Chris, those are the where Rick finds that they come back. Yeah. And so Rick hops on a motorcycle and rides all the way back to the camp where they were before they finally rolled out. And he digs Shane back up because if you remember, Carl shot Shane, but he shot him in the neck. Yeah. And he didn't shoot him in the head or anything. So he digs Shane up. It's a pretty interesting moment in the comics. I got to say, I don't know how this one slipped my mind. It's
dude, I was on the edge of my seat when he decides to journey back out from the prison. I was like, oh my God, something's going to happen. He's going to get sidetracked. They're going to go out looking for him. I thought somebody was going to die as a result of that for sure.
Yeah, he goes back and he digs Shane up. And, just everything about it was super cool. Just the way he tells Shane, he's like, I didn't stand up. I didn't bury you under that much dirt. And Shane stands up. And then, Rick just, I guess, couldn't live with the thought of just leaving him there, wiggling under the dirt. And so he shoots him in the head. But I love as he walks away, he's like, I'm not burying you a second time. You son of a bitch, or whatever. But, seeing some really cool stuff, man, and some characters that I just don't understand. So I like show Tyrese. But, man, comic Tyrese is leaps and bounds better. I mean, he's got so much more of a front and center role in the comic. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's like Rick's best friend. And even though they do come to blows at one point, he's still, up to that point, I mean, he's almost like, Rick's angel on his shoulder at times. He's there to give Rick advice, and they have a really good friendship. And he's just such a good kid, and he's badass, and he's just, he don't take no shit, and he's somebody you don't mess with, whereas the Tyrese in the show, I mean, yeah, he could whoop your ass, but at the same time, he just was like this big, essentially was just this big teddy bear.
When the governor did what he did to Tyrese, man, I had to put the comic down for a couple days.
Yeah.
I was reading the trade paperbacks at that point. I didn't read it month to month till 49 after the prison fell. But yeah, I had to put it down for a couple days, dude. That was some powerful, powerful stuff.
Right.
Really dark.
It was very rough. But let's see. Let me see. But anyways, but yeah, it was to see that, which, I mean, also too, I mean, like Carol, there's so many points where we can look and say, like, man, going from the comic to the show was not a good transition. But then there's other characters we can say, man, the show, like Carol, for instance, on the show is so much better than Carol in the comics. I mean, she starts off fairly normal, just kind of, she's just looking for love pretty much is the main thing. She just needs love and affection. And I really didn't feel like she came off as quite that disturbed until I noticed once we think Tyrese is dead. They go to the gym to clear that out in the prison, and Tyrese gets into this big horde of zombies, and they leave him thinking there's no way he survived, and they tell Rick when he gets back, so they go in there because Rick's like, we got to put him down, yada, yada. So we owe him that much. So they go in, and he's alive.
Yeah.
But that time period, there's only a little bit of time, but where Carol thought Tyrese was dead, that's when she kind of kisses Lori.
Dude, how lucky would Rick have been if Lori was going to go for that situation?
Yeah, right. They suggest like a 3-way marriage type deal.
Polyamorous marriage, baby.
And it just, but after that, Carol starts to spiral and then ends up, offing herself in a very, and even as she's getting, the way she kills herself, for those that haven't read it but don't mind the spoilers, which is, I hope, who's still here. If you don't like spoilers and you've been listening this far, I don't know what, please don't. But anyways, Carol, lets a zombie bite her neck, basically. And it bites her throat out, but she's just like, almost laughing when it happens, just kind of like, oh yeah, you do like me or something, as the zombie pulls a chunk out of her throat. So TV show Carol was much, much better, I feel, than not even really the same character. And then
the only thing they share is the name, and they have a daughter, Sophia. That's right. It.
One had a daughter named Sophia.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was that. And I mean, other characters like Dale. I liked Dale on the show. Dale in the comic, I liked him so much more. Like he was kind of a wise old man, but in the comic versus the show, he also kind of was one of them old men. I'm not saying he could whoop your ass, but you kind of thought about before you messed with. Like, he didn't take shit from anybody.
Yeah.
Whereas in the show, I mean, he kind of stood up to Shane, but the second Shane kind of bucked at him, he backed down.
Right.
And then, like, looking at other characters, Andrea in the comics, such a good character. Such a good character. In the show, just not. Even Lori, comic book Lori. But she, I completely forgot she hits a spell where, and they do say it's probably largely due to, pregnant hormones, but where she doesn't like Rick.
Yeah.
Because while he rides off or whatever, and which is a funny scene, because her and Carol are in the showers, and Axel accidentally walks in. It's like, y'all ought to walk in the shower, but then as he's leaving, he's like, I'm gonna go back to my cell before I lose this mental image.
While it's still fresh, got to get it in while it's still fresh.
But it's like, in that conversation, she even makes a comment about how, I'm sick of Rick, blah, blah, blah. And it's a lot. I do know pregnant, my girlfriend obviously had a baby 7 months ago, and I can say pregnancy hormones are some real deal stuff. Women are going through so much, and their body is going through so many sudden changes that the hormones do get thrown off, and you have to just give them the space and let them ride it out. But yeah, so Lori did kind of go through, but I didn't find comic Lori as unlikable as show Lori.
Yeah, I'll go with that. Yeah, I didn't like Lori on the TV show much at all, to be quite frank.
No, I don't think many people did. I didn't really have much of a problem with Lori on the show, though. Some people seem to not like her pretty much from the beginning. I didn't really have a problem with her until her reaction to Shane's death.
Yeah.
I thought that was stupid. I get it, right? She was banging him, all of that. But she herself had been giving Shane the cold shoulder and even all but told Rick to kill Shane because she said he was dangerous. He was going to kill somebody. Something needed to be done. Then Rick did it, and she's like, and slaps him and tells him to get away and, all of that. So show her was, kind of, but yeah, Morgan and Dwayne were completely different. I forgot how different that interaction is, where Morgan basically finds him and is like, "Hold on, son, he's a human," and doesn't think he's been bit, doesn't really even address his wound. Rick wakes up not tied to the bed, and Morgan's like, "Hey, you hungry? We just getting ready to eat dinner," and explains it. And it's crazy. I did not realize how much they said the word zombie in the comic. They kind of with the show were really big on the whole, they're not going to say it in this world. Zombie lore never existed, which I think is a really cool concept, because that is something to where it's like, man, unless we had 28 days later zombies in this world, a zombie apocalypse like The Walking Dead would be super easy to survive. I feel like the military would have it in check. Just a couple of tanks and, some light machine guns, you'd be good. You could mow down a horde. Because they're so slow and they're so easy. It's like the military can't handle them, but a couple of inexperienced, you get what I'm saying? It's the way it always works is in these zombie stories, military and trained combatants can't take them. And I know sometimes it'll be due to the fact that it happens so fast or they don't know what to do, yada, yada, yada. But in our world, in this one we live in, we've seen so many zombie flicks and we would know how to handle it. It just would be easy. Yeah. So in a world where there has never been zombie lore, it is so much more believable that they wouldn't know how to handle this. You wouldn't know just to shoot them in the head. You wouldn't know what the hell was going on, whereas the comic, is it the comic? No, it's never mind. That's Resident Evil. I was going to say there was a reference to Romero's Night of the Living Dead, but that was actually in Resident Evil. But yeah, the comic, they actually do say zombies quite a bit. But I do like at one point Rick does make a comment to, who's he talking to? Is it Tyrese? Maybe it's Tyrese. He's talking to someone, he calls them roamers, and they're like, roamers. And Rick's like, well, saying zombies, it took a while for us to be able to say that and take it seriously. But then he talked about how roamers were the ones who kind of just roamed long distances and didn't. Some of them stay put, some of them whatever. And
the governor called them biters because they all bite.
That's true. Yeah, we don't really see the term walkers in the comic book, do we?
There is
no. Which in the show we got from Morgan, the walkers. Did you get bit? I love Lenny James so much, man. His voice, his country accent though is just so fun to replicate. Did you get bit? He said, take a knife. When he pulls up the pocket knife to cut Rick loose, he's like, take a nice long look at it. Sharp. I will kill you. Yeah. Oh, Lenny James, I know you'll never listen to this, but if you are, we love you. You're such a good actor. We might get
to meet him in a Comic-Con someday.
We need to do that. We podcast about The Walking Dead, yet we've not been to one Comic-Con.
Go to Walker Stalker Con. All the Comic-Cons I've been, I don't think I've ever ran into an actor from The Walking Dead.
Well, I think Walker Stalker Con, basically a lot of the Walking Dead actors and actresses have just quit going to those from what I was reading.
Really?
I think they're falling apart.
Well, I'm sure Comic-Cons, I'm sure we're bound to see somebody, Steven Yeun.
I would love to, man. I wish Steven Yeun would come back to make some kind of, and that's another thing, Glenn, man. There was we get that very interesting plot point where Glenn had the hots for Carol. Remember that?
Oh yeah.
How weird would that have been in the show? Because in the comics, Carol's not that much. She's not that old. In the comics, she is older than Glenn, but she doesn't appear to be in the age range of show Carol. I would put show Carol somewhere in her, anywhere from like late 40s to mid 50s. Yeah. It's just at least what I think. I mean, and I could be wrong, but where I would say comic Carol is probably, what would you say, like in her late 20s, early 30s?
Oh, yeah, dude. She's a fox.
And Glenn is like in his late teens, early 20s, because Maggie's 19 when he meets her, whereas in the show, I think they maybe made her a little bit older.
A little bit older. Yeah.
But in the comics, she was 18. And I don't think Glenn was that much older than her, and you had, which is crazy to think we're at that age where it's like Carol was more along the lines of our age. Yeah. Glenn was still just a little out of teenage years. But that would have been really weird with show Glenn and Carol if Glenn, because Glenn was straight stalking for a while. It'd be like you're reading the comic and there'd be certain panels where like her and Tyrese were getting all cuddly, and then it would just it would just be one square that was Glenn giving him like the eyes. That's another thing. Carol and Tyrese were together in the comic until Michonne comes along and gives a blowjob that changes everything.
Yep.
Changes everything. That whole interaction was just so interesting, because she's like recognizes him as a football player, and Michonne we know to be a very strong and independent woman, but in that moment, in that gym, she kind of becomes a groupie.
Well, Michonne got around, man. I mean, she used her sexuality however she wanted.
She did, yeah. She was in charge of her sexuality, which is an empowering thing.
I mean, Tyrese, she totally overpowered him sexually.
Oh yeah, she just, like I said, she's so strong, and definitely, and I don't mean like she's just a mindless whatever, but I mean she definitely went from whatever, just she kind of fanned that, geeked out there for a minute, because that was like one of her, she knew him as a football player. And we learned also in the comics that Rick is a Raiders fan.
No, I don't remember that either.
Yeah, he mentions when Tyrese tells him, because they go to, remember Wilshire Estates, the community they go to where they lose Donna?
Yeah.
They go to, and it looks like it's going to be heaven, but then as the snow melts on the wall, you see where it says, like, everyone's dead, stay away.
Yeah.
And the next day, they're going to search the grounds, and that's when they run into just this horde that eats Donna. And then Alan is going through his little time period where he, isn't doing well with the death of his wife. But, when they're there, Rick and Tyrese are clearing out a house, and Rick opens the door in the house. I think it's the basement, and these zombies come out and overpower him. And Tyrese comes down the stairs and tackles one of the zombies. And Rick's like, "Where'd you learn to tackle like that?" And that's when he tells him that he was in the NFL or whatever. It's really cool, man, to go back and just see the differences. And what was it? It was a whole nother plot. It's so many. I mean, it's obviously a lot of differences, but just, it's been years, man, since I've read that. I mean, many, 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 many years since I've read that.
Yeah, same here, man. My little Christmas break, which I got so many comics to catch up on, I don't know that I will, but I'd enjoy going back.
You should go back and reread. So it's really fun to do, man. It's been so long that it was a lot of new stuff that like I had forgot about, or whatever.
Yeah,
really, really cool. And I mean, we forget how different Show Herschel was to Comic Herschel. I mean, Comic Herschel went to slap Lori. He put a gun to Rick's head and was going to kill him. Like Show Herschel was very, stern with the "you're not staying here," but he wasn't violent.
No.
Comic Herschel, on the other hand, raised a hand to Lori, and then when they got to arguing, he put a gun to Rick's head. Even told Rick when Rick came to bring them from because they leave Glenn and Maggie and Herschel and all of them, and they go to prison, and then Rick gets a guilty conscience, and it's like, why should we have this to ourselves when they're out there exposed the way they are? So he goes back and gets them, and Herschel tells him, like, I was going to kill you.
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't doing that for show, whatever, because Otis, I think, is the one that knocks, Herschel's hand away from. I thought the way they did Otis was stupid too, but we'll get to that in a minute. So, like, he knocks the gun away from Herschel, from Rick's head, and tells him, what are you doing? These are good people, or whatever. I think it was Otis. I'm sorry. I just read it, and it's sad that I'm saying I think, but I'm pretty sure it was Otis because I know Otis is the one that goes to Herschel afterwards, and it's like, man, you almost killed that guy, and he finds Herschel cowering in his room, and Herschel's like, I'm losing my mind. So we know Herschel's not normally that violent, but I mean, he raises a hand to Lori, like he straight up was going to backhand Lori, and then he put a gun to Rick's head. So, and then remember, do you remember after the twins get killed, right? So after Thomas cuts off the twins' head, and Herschel's son Billy starts talking shit to Herschel. You know, he's like, they died because of you. You brought us here. And I don't know if you remember, but Herschel gets up and throws hands with him, beats the shit out of him. Like, Herschel in the comic was way, quite a bit different. And I mean, it is fun to look. And yet, again, that's another one. I liked Herschel in the comics. He was a gruff old grumpy man, but I liked Herschel in the show better. Yeah. Scott Wilson's Herschel was freaking awesome.
Yeah, man. A lot of contrasts, a lot of ups and downs. But
But yeah, you should go back and reread. I would love for you to reread this, and then we go back and discuss it even further.
Yeah, that would be cool, man. I mean, I have to consider that. Like I said, I got so much backlog comic wise, but that'd be a nice little break in the action.
We had somebody comment on YouTube and ask, "Would we go back and break them down?" I'd be totally down to do that.
We can do that.
Another one, like I said, was Otis. In the show, Otis was a guy that we liked. Yes, he shot Carl, but you knew pretty much from the minute he came on screen that Otis was not a bad guy.
Yeah.
And that it was completely accident, which made what Shane did to him even worse. I mean, a lot of the show Otis's dialogue just showed what a good man he was. Mm-hmm. He took Shane there and, because he felt guilt for shooting Carl and, I mean, saved Shane. I mean, Otis was a hero by all means.
He was.
In the comic, however, he's this little skinny kind of cowardly man who mistaked Carl. And there was no deer in the comic. Carl didn't have that weird moment that he did in the show where he approached a deer, to which, forget how magical that was supposed to be. Even if there was a deer standing there that was allowing my son to come that close to it, I would not let my son get that close to the deer because the deer's probably about to trample his ass or stick a horn through his gut. Screw that Pocahontas nature shit where it's like, oh, he's going to be one with it. It's beautiful, yada, yada, yada. I'd have been like, get your ass away from that deer. But, none of that. Like, Otis just thinks they're zombies as they're walking through the woods and boom, shoots Carl. And then, like the show, he immediately feels bad and all of that, and they carries him back. But the thing is, Otis, up to the prison point, seemed like a decent guy, right? Like he shot Carl, but then he tried to save Carl, and he felt tremendous guilt for shooting Carl.
Yeah.
All of that. Tried to do what he could to make things right. When Herschel was going crazy and put a gun to Rick's head and all that, like, it was Otis who went back there and was like, man, these are good people. You can't just kick them out. These are decent, blah, 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 And then once he gets to the prison, apparently him and Patricia broke up. Because remember, it's through Otis that we meet Michonne. Otis is on the horse and buggy, and he gets in a tight spot. Michonne saves him. She loses a sword for a brief stint. But then she and he get to the prison, and Michonne gets a much warmer welcome to the prison in the comics than she did in the show. In the show, she was slightly tortured and treated like a prisoner, whereas in the show, they're like, come on in, neighbor, But Otis gets into the prison because, remember, Patricia had that weird point for some reason. It wasn't, I don't really understand why she did. She just kind of turned over and started helping the prisoners.
Yeah.
Help them get the guns. And she was like, you said you weren't going to kill them. Mm-hmm. But yada, yada, yada. And we get that moment similar where Rick puts a bullet through the dude's head during the zombie attack, whereas in the show it was a machete and it wasn't Tomas. But anyways, but then Otis is talking to Patricia and he makes a comment about, you went off and helped those N-words. And out of nowhere, Otis just becomes this racist piece of shit. And I'm not saying he wasn't a racist piece of shit to begin with, but he wasn't painted any way near that. So for me, reading it all back to back, that just kind of came out of nowhere. I was like, that's kind of a radical change from Otis's character. I'm not saying, he's a farming white dude from the South, so maybe he was racist. Not saying that farming white dudes are racist, but let's face it, that is how they're painted in media. I mean, white boys from the South, and I don't consider either of us racist, but I mean, like, that is sometimes how they're painted, especially this being made in the early 2000s. I mean, for comic writers and movie makers, anybody, any white dude from the South was, just primed to be racist inherently. But, just, I don't know, it felt for me kind of out of nowhere. I'm like, I really, rereading this, I liked Otis up to that point. And he's like, you had to go and help those N-words. And it was like, you, what?
Yeah.
And I mean, it could be argued he was just mad at Patricia and through that, whatever. But I mean, we see some deep-seated racism there, but yet he seemed fine when Tyrese was, with them on the farm. So, but it is interesting to look at some of the differences, and I think that we on the channel should go back and explore that more.
Yeah, man, I will have to do that, and maybe next Monday we can go round for round. Yeah,
absolutely. But anyways, we will see you soon. We hope everyone has a very, very Merry Christmas and Happy Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate. We hope that it is filled with joy. Even if you don't celebrate, we hope that you have a good day and a good week. And we'll catch you next Monday, maybe some on the Patreon.
Yeah.
I'm Justin.
I'm JP.
And we're the Podcasting Dead.